Hello, hello! Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to more of Sara's War. If you are enjoying this story, I would love it if you did me a quick favor and wrote me a review anywhere you find me online. Whether that's a podcast review or an Amazon review for Sara's War or a Goodreads review, wherever you'd like. I would love it so much. Anyway, today we are on Chapter 36 of Sara's War. Here we go. Chapter 36, Indignation. The crowded campground empties as the dirt road fills with camouflage figures, tents, bags, and weapons. Every person loads the long line of army vehicles in haste. Randy helps me load all the medical supplies and equipment into the aid truck. He doesn't even complain about my obsessive-compulsive ways of organization. I tell him precisely where I want everything, and he follows my direction with exactness. I catch a glimpse of Sam through a bus window with his head resting against the glass. He's doing much better after the extra blood I gave him this morning. He's even strong enough that he can sit up on his own now. But he can't do much else. Still, it's progress. Better still, now I know who some of the willing blood donors are. The air smothers with thick anticipation. The second Jack orders to board the vehicles, the crowd clambers onto the buses like children ready for a field trip. I plop down on a seat next to Randy, just as the driver turns on the ignition. I watch the red oaks pass by us as we drive out of the forest called Eagle. This bus has more people on it than the one I traveled in yesterday. I forgot how loud the noise of bantering and laughter can be in closed quarters. But the noise is a comfort to me. It's better than silence, that's for sure. I recognize Chris as one of the group's frequent contributors. His distinct voice pierces through all others. I twist around in my seat to see who his latest flirts are. Lexy is one of them. I smile, not at all surprised. Molly is also close to him, laughing at anything that comes out of his mouth. He returns many of her smiles, as well as others, but his main focus appears to be on Lexy. I like this idea. It's a nice thought to hold on to keep my mind off what's waiting for us at Bridgetown. Jack sits a few seats in front of the laughing crowd, sitting by himself and oiling his rifle. I face forward again and glance at Randy next to me. His face is practically plastered to the window. "How are you, Randy?" I ask. Randy whirls his head around. "What?" I smile at his oblivion. "How are you?" I repeat. At that moment, Molly's high, clear cackle rings out, along with Chris's low rumble of a laugh. Randy peers over his shoulder to look at them. "I'm fine," he says through a sigh. "So why aren't you back there with all the hooligans? It sounds like a good time." "Why aren't you with them?" Randy hedges. I shrug. I don't like crowds. "Huh, that's interesting. It didn't look that way at the ball," Randy disputes. "That was different." "How so?" "I don't know. It was like I traveled back in time and was a freshman in college again." "Are you saying you're not like that anymore?" I shrug again. Things change. "You can say that again," Randy mutters, looking back out the window. "What's going on with you and Molly?" I wonder. This isn't a question I would normally ask, but everyone else seems to know, so maybe it's safe. Randy turns to look at me directly. "Wow, that's a little blunt for you. Aren't I always blunt?" "Not in normal conversations," Randy says. I scowl at him, not knowing what he really meant by that. "Is this your way of telling me it's none of my business?" "I'm sorry then." Randy waves his hand. It's okay. There's nothing going on between us anyway." "Really? Is that why she's trying to make you jealous?" Here I am, being blunt again. But I feel comfortable with Randy. Randy laughs once, looking embarrassed, but not upset. Because she knows she can. "What happened with you two, Randy?" I ask carefully, hoping to sound kind instead of nosy. Randy scrutinizes my face for a moment. "I'm surprised you haven't heard." "Really? You're surprised I haven't heard?" Randy lets out a low chuckle. "I guess not." Then he sighs. "There's not much to tell, though. She thinks I cheated on her." "I didn't. End of story," he says flatly, as he looks straight ahead. Well, there's got to be some way to clear that up, I mollify. Are you sure there's not more to the story? Does there need to be more? He asks a bit sourly. I shift toward him. All I'm saying is that might not be the real reason. Maybe she does believe you, but there's something else holding her back. I'm trying to sound encouraging, but Randy must not think so, because all he does is glower at me before he looks away. Why don't... Then I stop myself. I've already been blunt enough with him. I don't want to push it too far. A burst of laughter, louder than ever before, rumbles the bus. I twist in my seat again to see if I can catch some of it. Molly holds her stomach as if it hurts, and the soldier next to her sustains an inaudible laugh, slapping his leg. Then I catch sight of Lexy. She's now sitting with Jack, no longer with the rowdy group. Her expression shocks me. She glares right at me with blatant purpose. It reminds me of Molly the night of the ball. I automatically glance at Randy, my first thought being that there's some interest there that I'd been oblivious to. But Randy is staring out the window again, completely oblivious to me. I peer at Lexy again, who is still glowering relentlessly. What is wrong with her? Ugh, I moan internally. Do I really have to deal with this right now? Right before we are all off to our doom? Women can be so annoying sometimes. I tried to shake it off. Oh well, don't worry about it, Sara. Just let it go. I glance back at Jack now, whose expression is completely opposite of Lexy's. He meets my gaze and gives me a small smile. I force a smile back and face forward again. Why don't what? Randy asks me, bringing me out of my thoughts. Huh? What were you going to say? Randy wonders. Oh, it's okay. It's none of my business. Just ask me, Randy insists. Well, I was going to say if you really do think Molly doesn't trust you, then why don't you let her go? But I also don't want you to give up. I know it's hard to know what to do. Do you think you'd be able to forgive each other and start over? We've tried letting go and starting over. Neither one seems to work. Well, you obviously... I stop again. Just say it, Randy persists. I know I don't know all the details, and I understand that it's probably complicated, but it doesn't sound like you've really been able to let go of the past. A little voice inside me tells me I should follow my own advice, but I ignore it. Randy gazes at me in silence. He looks like this thought is brand new to him. He opens his mouth to speak, but someone else beats him to it. What are you thinking? Lexy demands. She's now sitting on the opposite side of the bus, directly across from me, with a very pronounced scowl. Lexy, hi, I say. Lexy stands from her seat, and with one stiff lunge, plops down on the empty one in front of me. What are you thinking? Lexy repeats in the same stern tone. I raise my hands. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why did you break it off with Jack? Her expression twists into an incredulous, dirty look. Randy leans back in his seat and starts twiddling his thumbs. Literally. I clear my throat, not pleased that Lexy chose to have this conversation in front of him. First of all, I say, there was nothing to break off. Oh, come on, Lexy protests. I don't like this new side of her I'm seeing. Rather than her usual playful teasing, she actually sounds angry. From the very beginning, you've been all oogly-eyed over him. I've never seen anyone more oogly. Although her words sound completely silly, she spits them out vehemently like she wants to expose and insult me. I feel the heat come through to my cheeks. Why is she doing this? How very unfair. Beside me, Randy tries to block us out by whistling softly to himself and tapping his fingers on his knee. Why does it matter to you, Lexy? I demand. Lexy kneels up on her seat, leaning as close to me as she possibly can without crawling over the backrest. She speaks in a fierce, low voice. I owe everything to him. And so does half the army, and half the country, and half the world. That's not an exaggeration, Randy mutters sarcastically under his breath. Shut up! Lexy yells at him. Randy stares back at her, unoffended, then resumes his whistling and tapping. Are you mad at him? Lexy demands, turning to glare at me again. No! Why would I be mad at him? Lexy throws her hands up in the air. I don't know, because he didn't ask you to the ball, because he smiled at another girl. Oh, please, I exclaim, rolling my eyes. Abruptly, Randy gets to his feet. Excuse me, he says, as he shuffles his way in front of me and onto the seat across the aisle. I can't blame him, poor guy. He told me your lame excuse. What's the real reason? If he told you, then you already know, I say coolly. Oh, give me a break, Lexy shouts, slamming her hand down on the seat, causing it to shake underneath her. If Jack didn't care about you, I would smack you right now. Lexy, get up. Jack has somehow appeared next to us. Lexy glances up at him. No way, she protests. She's going to spill. I said get up. You're being ridiculous and you're way out of line, and you're making a scene. Lexy's eyes bulge in disbelief and jabs a finger at me. But she... Move! Jack commands. Lexy grits her teeth together, gives me one last evil glare, and stalks back to her seat at the rear of the bus. I glance up at Jack, who looks quite embarrassed. I did not expect her to do that. I'm sorry, Sara. I nod, and with an effort of nonchalance, Jack walks back to his seat. I take a deep breath and blow it out slowly. Wow, what was that all about? Does Lexy have feelings for Jack? She must. Why else would she have gone so berserk? A figure stands next to me again. May I sit with you now? Randy asks. Of course, I mutter, sliding over next to the window. I'm sorry about that, I say once Randy sits down. Randy grins. It wasn't really your fault. I smile back half-heartedly. I don't know why anyone would think a solid guy like Colonel Haskins would need any help, Randy says casually. I can tell he's trying to make light of the situation, but I'm not able to do it. She must like him, I murmur, looking straight ahead. That bothers you, doesn't it? No. Randy raises his eyebrows, attempting to hide his smirk. I roll my eyes. Fine, of course it does. Randy purses his lips, trying not to smile too big. So what is the real reason? For what? Why did you break it off with the head honcho? Randy wonders. There was nothing to break off, I say, failing to keep the irritation out of my voice. So kissing means nothing to you? I turn a sharp head to look at him. How do you know about that? Randy cocks his head. Sara, everybody knows. I sigh and face forward again. Okay, so I broke it off. Randy nods. How come? I glance out the window. I really don't want to talk about this, but at the same time I want someone to know, to understand. Randy has trusted me with a lot of things. Maybe I can trust him too. I don't look at him when I speak. My husband was killed just over a year ago, I say quietly. A long pause stretches into long silence. Finally, I meet Randy's gaze. His face is soft and sympathetic. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. It's okay. How did it happen? He asks with caution. I inhale deeply. Airport shooting, I say as calmly as I can. Ah, Randy sighs. You know, the CIA thinks they caught all of those traveling terrorists. Too bad they didn't figure that out a year ago. Randy nods solemnly. It's hard to let go of the past, isn't it? I stare back at his soft gaze. It seems Randy is actually on the same wavelength as me. It's nice. I will never judge him again for holding on to Molly. After all, it isn't as absurd as my situation. At least the person he is holding on to is still alive and still has possibilities. I frown and look out the window again. I have a suggestion for you, Randy offers. It's ironic that the tables have turned now, and he's the one doing the counseling. I shift to face him. Oh yeah? Randy nods once. Write him down. Huh? The reason you can't let your husband go is because you don't want to forget him. Am I right? I stare at Randy for a long while. It's hard for me to think about this. Yes. I suppose that's the main reason, I admit. So, why don't you write down anything and everything about him? Then you won't have to worry about forgetting him, because you can always go back and remember. I raise my eyebrows. That is a pretty good idea. Why haven't I thought of this before? Why haven't I written about Ryan? Well, right after he died, I was drafted into the army and didn't have time to do much of anything but bandage up bullet holes. Could I make time for it now? I repeat the words in my head. Write Ryan down. I had to do this. Why are you being so nice to me? I ask Randy. Randy shrugs. I owe you one. No, you don't. Why do you owe me one? Randy gazes out the window, then back at me. Well, for one, you're always respectful. To everybody. But I especially appreciate not being treated like a rat. I furrow my brow. Do other people treat him like that? And you're smart, Randy continues. Then he rolls his eyes. Obviously. But it hasn't gone to your head. Yet, anyway, he adds with a grin. And, he says, taking a deep breath, everybody knows you're good-looking. I roll my eyes. I certainly don't feel good-looking with hardly any hair. Ah, come on, Sara, Randy soothes. You have to know that every guy who sees you turns his head twice. I gaze at his expression. He looks completely serious. Even you? I wonder warily. Randy opens his hands with confession. Of course. Even next to Molly? I tease. It's the only thing I can think of to say to hide my discomfort. Randy gives me a disapproving look. Please don't do that to me. It's a total trap. I shrug. I honestly didn't mean anything by it. Randy smirks. Then his tone changes to serious again. But really, the reason I owe you one is for what you did for me last night when I completely lost it. You were so nice. You really have no idea how much you helped me. I wouldn't be sane today if it weren't for you. Wow, Randy, thank you. No, thank you. Randy reaches for his backpack on the floor and starts to rummage through it. Then he sits up with 2 notebooks in hand and holds one out to me. I take the notebook from him and stare blankly at the yellow lines. Then a ballpoint pen plops into my view and onto the paper. Why don't you get started? Randy suggests. I'll probably be writing letters the rest of the drive, so I won't be much for conversation anyway. And you can keep the notebook. I'm sure you will fill it. I glance back up at him. Thanks, Randy. He smiles a brilliant smile. Sure. He leans back and puts one knee into the seat in front of us and yanks off his pen cap with his teeth. I stare again at the blank notebook. An elbow nudges my arm. Go on, Randy prods. You can do it. Just start at the beginning. I inhale deeply. Yes, the beginning. Those are safe thoughts. Besides, I have 5 more hours to kill before we reach Bridgetown. I click my pen and let the words fall to the page. And that concludes Chapter 36. I hope you come back next Thursday for Chapter 37, which is called Diving Over the Edge. In this chapter, you get to hear about Ryan and another huge clue as to Sara's dreaded memory, and how Lexy got her scars. So I hope you join me next Thursday for more of Sara's War. I hope you all have a great, fantastic week. If you want to find out more about Brenda's books, you can visit brendasbooks.net. Until next time, take care.